After we understand the assumptions of the production possibility frontier, now we can check out what a PPF looks like on the graph. Here I already pull out my Microsoft whiteboard, and I already put number of cars on the vertical axis and number of potatoes produced on the horizontal. If you want to do this the other way around, you want to put the potatoes on the vertical and the number of cars on the horizontal, that's completely fine. Okay, it's not going to change anything we're going to find. Here you can also find the benefit of assuming too good economy. Okay, remember we made the assumption in the previous video that this economy produces only two goods, cars and potatoes, so that here we can pretty easily demonstrate the PPF on a two-dimensional graph. If we're talking about the three good economy or n good economies, then we might have a hard time showing you that again on the two-dimensional graph. All right, so here we're just going to tell you upfront what a PPF looks like, and then let's see if we can make sense of this. Okay, so we're going to tell you that a PPF looks like this. All right, let's label it a PPF. Okay. Now here I want to give you a chance to pause the video and think about the graphical features of what we just drew. Okay. Again, here you don't have to worry about any economics. No economics here. Just think about the graphical things. Like you were talking to your grandma, grandpa, okay, we just learned something called the PPF, and just tell them what a PPF curve looks like on the graph. Okay. All right, now you may pause the video and give yourself several minutes to think about it. All right, now let's come back and talk about the graphical features. Something many of you could come up with, I would guess, is the PPF is a curve, right? It's not a straight line. It's actually a curve. More specifically, you would find that the PPF slopes downward. It's just like the demand curve. So it's a downward sloping curve. All right, downward sloping. Okay. All right, let's move it a little bit up. And there's a third graphical feature here you may already found, which is the curve is actually bowed out. Okay. In other words, it's not bowed in or bowed towards the origin. It's actually bowed out. Okay. Now here we're going to use the economic intuition or the principles to make sense of these things. Okay. We're going to start with this downward sloping thing. Okay. And we're going to see why the PPF should slope downward. And after we finish these, we're going to talk about the bowed out curve. So we put the curve and about out them together. Okay, to talk about it. All right, and let's see here. Let's move these a little bit up to get more space. All right, so the specific way we're going to use is called the proof by contradiction. In other words, we're going to look at the opposite case and see if we can find any contradictions. Now, here, the opposite case would be here. Once again, the vertical axis is the number of cars. The horizontal axis is the number of potatoes. We just said that, the PPF should slope downward, right? What if it's sloping upward? So it's going to be like this, right? What's wrong with this upward PPF? Could we have an upward PPF in reality? Now, it's pretty easy to show the contradiction with the upward PPF. Here, we can find 2 points along this upward curve. This is a point A. This is a point B. Again, you can arbitrarily pick 2 points. Okay, so at point A, we find that these many cars are produced and these many potatoes are produced. At point B, these many cars and these many potatoes produced. Okay. Now we find that at point B, the economy produces more of both, right? It produces more of cars and potatoes. So logically, if B stays on the frontier, A must be below the frontier, right? Because it produces fewer of both. However, an upward sloping PPF tells us both A and B are on the frontier at the same time. So logically, this is wrong. This is a contradiction we just meant. Okay? So this tells us that the PPF must slope downwards. Okay? Or another way we can show you this is the contradiction of the upward sloping PPF is we can extend this PPF, the upward sloping one. Okay? Now, here we already get A and B. We could also get point C here along this line, right? Or we could get point D here. So what do we find? For a given amount of factors of production or productive resources, we can actually produce infinite number of cars and potatoes. Correct? Based upon the economic principle we learned in chapter 1, the resources are scarce, right? So here, for a given amount of resources, if we can produce an infinite number of cars, potatoes, we don't have any scarcity at all. In other words, the upward sloping PPF simply violates the scarcity we discussed in chapter 1. That's why we believe PPF must slope downward. Okay. Now let's move back to this downward sloping PPF. All right. So here we find that the downward sloping PPF and the 2 axes gives us this closed area. Okay. So this closed area here tells us what this economy can produce. In other words, this is a feasible, okay? So for the given amount of resources, it can be produced, okay? Everything below the ppf, okay? If we go beyond the ppf, that's infeasible. In other words, for the given amount of resources, the economy cannot produce that many cars and potatoes at the same time. Okay? Remember here, infeasible at this moment for the given amount of resources. If we look at the long term, when the total amount of each factor can be changed, then what's infeasible today could be feasible in the future.